there's a lot of green under this layout now. I've been working on my IR sensors and I've got them all placed and ready for all of the anti-clockwise storage lines. And once I got them in, I couldn't resist having a go at a bit of automation to see what I could do with it. So back above deck, these are my storage lines. And I kind of mentioned it in the last video, the idea with them generally is to hold as many trains as possible, so I'm not constantly putting trains on and off the tracks and putting them in boxes and getting them out of boxes. So most of the lines have got just about got the capacity to hold a short train and a long train. And it's been working like that for a while and it's been working quite well, but I do get a bit bored with the tedium of once I've taken, if we take this left-hand one, once I've taken the 101 out, I might have two other trains running round, so I've got 3 throttles open. I've then got to find a 4th throttle to shuttle this APT forward a little bit to make space at the back for the 101 to perch on the end when it comes back. And so my first aim with automation was to see if I could get the APT to shuffle forward when the class 101 moves out of the front. And to my surprise, I seem to have been able to do it. So I'm going to hold my tablet in front here. I've got the class 101, better set a route. And so I'm going to bring the class 101 out, and I'm going to keep this tablet in front and keep my hands in front so that it's obvious I'm not cheating. So out comes the 101, and here, there it goes. Now what should happen here, there we go, the APT picks up that there's space in front of it, shuffles forward and parks. And similarly now from the back, if I take the APT out at the front, and my class 101 stays parked here as the APT heads out and clears the last sensor on this line, off goes the class 101, and if we walk with it, it'll just steadily head down. I'm going to have to very quickly change some points so that the APT doesn't come around the back of it. But effectively I can just leave that, not worry about that class 101, it's going to shuffle to the front, hit the front sensor and stop. And that's it, nicely parked with a great big space left here for the APT when it's finished doing the rounds to come back and park up the back. But then I thought, this one's bypassing the yard, so this is the entry point to the yard here that the APT has missed, and it's gone off down what I kind of describe as the through line. But I had a sudden thought that if I put a sensor right at the entrance to the yard, which is that green shiny thing down there, then could I automate the yard, automate JMRI to effectively pick the train up from me when I cross that sensor there, and then just take the train and park it where it needs to go. It requires some assumptions, mainly that all trains will always be parked in the same line. They will have an assigned line, but to be honest, that's kind of how I was working anyway, because all the lines are usually taken up anyway, so if a train comes out of a line, it's going to have to go back into that line, and coupled with the shuffling forward, it kind of works. So that obviously that class 101 has shuffled forward all on its own, so I'm going to set the route back to here, so the APT is going to come in this time round, and I'm just going to put the throttle in front. I'm going to do nothing, so these points are set there and straight on there, and there's some line there with a Class 101 to crash into down at the bottom, and I'm going to put my bravely put my throttle down over there and just watch what happens to this APT as it comes in. It's crossing the sensor now. It's slowed down noticeably there. That's the point where the layout has taken over control of the train. So I'm not in, if I had the throttle, I wouldn't be in control of this train anymore. But if we just move down, this is how much I trust it. Mind you, I don't have the throttle with me. So down here, there's the sensor. Parked. And just from the point of view of JMRI and how it looks on there, I've got the dispatcher window open at the bottom and just my panel at the top. And it's this panel I've sort of explained before, I think. It's this panel that explains to JMRI which blocks which comes after next, which one the order is, which is critical, and you need that in order to be able to automate things, I think. So I'm going to set off, what have we got over there? I'm going to bring the Class 101 out of the front. I'm going to bring it back so that it parks at the back. That whole operation from the Class 101 going out the front, coming around the layout and coming onto the back should result in two, what JMRI calls dispatches. The first one will be the APT shuffling up to the front, and the second one will be the Class 101 once it enters the yard being picked up and driven to park at the back. So let's start the Class 101. That's heading out now, so we should see back on the screen a dispatch. There it goes. So immediately we've had a dispatch for the APT, which is moving it forward into that spot, and when it gets there, which seems to be now, the dispatch has disappeared. So it's now kind of sat doing nothing. You see the layout knows there's a vacant spot on the end of line 1, which is the little blue bit there, and that the first two blocks on line 1 are taken by the APT, but that little blue bit at the end means that there is capacity for a little one. So around is coming the little one, quite slowly, and here it comes. Again, I'm in control of this one. I've started the Class 101 and I'm driving it round, but effectively I've decided that it's time for it to park. So it's going to head in and come into the yard, and as soon as it does that, there we have another dispatch. Which is moving the Class 101 into its storage space, and then as soon as it's parked and the sensor's gone yellow, it knows that its little automation journey is finished, the dispatch is completed, and the storage line is now occupied. As I start to prepare for my second anti-clockwise storage line and which trains are going to go on them, I noticed in the last video I was going through kind of trying to manually stop trains by sensor values, and I was overshooting by quite a long way, so that affected the placement of sensors on the other three lines. However, now I've played with this, I'm not really going to be stopping trains myself by sensor movement. I'm either going to be watching them as I park them manually, or I'm just going to let the layout park them. And what's very noticeable, if I move this back, is when the layout stops a train, it stops it right on the sensor. As soon as it gets there, it stops, because I guess it's running more slowly than me as well. What that's meant is, because I started placing sensors to allow for a little bit of overrun, because there was quite a lot of overrun when I was testing, and now I'm not getting overrun, some of the sensor placements are resulting in things like this. So I'm think I'm going to struggle to place 6 Mark III or Mark IV coach trains on these lines without moving the sensors, but I'll give it a go, see if I can find a line that it fits on. If it doesn't, I'll have to move it. And down at the front end, where I'd started moving sensors back because of the overrun when I was parking these things manually, I think actually now I'm going to, where there is a hole further forward, I'm going to move not this one, because that was ridiculously far forward, and I think the APT has only just crossed that sensor, and that's perfect. But here on the second line, I think I'd moved this sensor back to here, which is just, as it turns out, way too far back. So since there's a hole there, I'll just pick that sensor up, move it back to there, which creates me a lot of space here. Obviously this is the shortest train, but the longest one's only going to be another coach, so probably about, say, there. There's still a massive space there for that class 40, which is the one that's overrunning the points slightly and causing some rub. So I'm going to have to dig the sensor out from under that one and move it to maybe where that gap is in the APT coaches, maybe a little bit further forward, and that'll create me a bit more leg room at the back end. So amidst some roadworks, I'm now ready to test line 2. I've got the trains for it. I decided which trains are going to go on it, which are the twin Pacer Northern Spirit class 142 thing and the class 40 BR. They're both quite good at stalling, so this might not be quite as smooth as the last line, but the idea is that this line will behave exactly the same as line 1, but also that when a train comes in and triggers the gate down there, the layout isn't going to start driving the wrong train. It's not going to start moving the 101 or the APT and put me in all kinds of chaos. So I'm going to get the 142 hopefully moving. Out it comes. Again, if I put this on, you can see the automation is even reflected on the sliders, on the direct throttles. That's gone back down to 0 again because it's just nudged it forward. And I'll speed the twin Pacer up, bring it round and get it parked. Come on, little thing. Right, we're getting close now, so again we'll bring it in at a decent speed. I'll try and hold this out of the way, but you should see throttle changes, throttle differences. I think it's probably coming in. There it went. So it's now going to take it in and hopefully dump it. There we go, on the end. So now try bringing the class 40 out, give it a decent whack because it's been stalling a bit. And again, the twin Pacer throttle should pick up shortly. There it goes. It's going to take it down and park it at the end. And I'll just slow the class 40 down because it's coming in. Should see throttle changes here as well, although it's got a good tendency to stall too. And that should poodle onto where its sensor is and stop. I'm going to try then to talk through setting up the third of these storage lines, which is this one here. It's going to have the class 91 Swallow on it, and it's going to have a Super Sprinter on it as well. And I'm going to try and set up right from setting up the blocks and the sections through to automating it and getting the trains running through. And I'm going to try and be quick. So, quick explanation. This is the panel. This explains how blocks, at least the starts to explain to JMRI how blocks fit together. This is our line. This is where the IR sensor is for the yard entry. I must admit I've botched it a bit in that I've added these 3 turnouts to that block. So the block comprises the bit of track here that's got the sensor under it and these 3 turnouts. I should maybe also explain that this is all infrared sensors, and I'm using infrared sensors here because I think they suit the purpose better, in that this is about yards, it's about storage, it's about stopping trains, and it's about detecting whether a stationary train is parked in a certain point in the line. And for me, infrared sensors work better for that. Once I get to the rest of I'm going to automate the whole thing, but once I get to the rest of the lines, I'll be using the current detection sensors because they're more suited to detecting trains that are moving, if you like. So I have my block set up for this line here. It's split into 3 blocks and it has 3 sensors. This infrared sensor here is at the front. It's an anti-clockwise line, so trains come through left to right. 3 blocks, each denoted by a sensor here, and obviously then the blocks are adjacent as well. So this block is the first block. This is the yard entry, and it comprises these 3 turnouts as well. So there are all kinds of paths can go through these sections when we get there, and then the last block here is connected directly to this turnout, so these blocks are adjacent. And if I go to blocks, that's my yard entry block. It has a sensor there, the IR sensor block, and they sort of roughly go with what I was explaining before. So here we're down to, these are the 3 blocks that we're going to look at here. No, sorry, this one, because they're not quite in that order, are they? So line 3, yeah, these 3 blocks. See, they've already got their infrared sensors assigned, so that kind of bit of it's done. There's the basic blocks are configured. Next thing to do is add them to sections. Sections start to describe to JMRI in preparation for automation the direction and path that trains will take through blocks. Sections can kind of be chained together, whereas blocks are just more isolated things. So I'm going to start adding my sections here. I'm going to add a section for each of the blocks that are in that 3rd line. So let's go for AC yard 3C. But I find it easy to go kind of in the direction that the trains will travel. So I'm going to add that, and I'm going to add it to, will be line 3, block 3. Add the block, and immediately it's asking me for the direction. So if a train is coming from, this is how I understand this anyway, if a train's coming from line 3, block 2, that will be travelling in reverse because it's coming the wrong way through the storage line. But if it's coming from the AC yard entry, which is kind of over here on the map, then it would be travelling forwards. So I'm going to set that, and that's all I need to set for my section for now. Do that. Let's add another one, and this will be 3B, and it's going to be line 3, block 2. I'm going to add it, and if a train is coming from block 1, it's going the wrong way, so I'm going to put that as reverse, and if it's coming from block 3 into block 2, it's going the correct direction. So I'm going to do that, create that, and then my last section is going to be 3A, and it's going to be line 3, block 1. Add that block, and if there's no block on the other side of that, that's where my blocks stop on the layout. Let's get that up. This is so we've come down here. This was AC yard entry. This was block 3. This was 3C, whatever I called it. This was block 2, 3B. Section 3B, and this is block 1, section 3A, and there are no blocks on the layout after here, so that's why I didn't have any choice when I was creating this section. It's only got one direction here, and if it's coming from block 2, it's going forward, and that's that created. So I think now, if I remember rightly, I go on to transits. So that's the sections and how they join together. A transit is kind of a set of instructions that an automated train would use, in my case, to get from here to wherever it's going. So I'm going to add my transit. I need 2 transits, 2 journeys effectively for each line. I need the journey from, well, 3 actually. I need the journey from, put this back up, here to, on my line, to here, it will always assume that there's something parked in. That's kind of part of what I'm working with in a minute. It will always assume that it's a shared line if I'm setting it for 2 trains, and it will always assume that there's something parked in that line already, that something came out, something shuffled up to the front, and there's room at the back. But it has to determine whether there's room for a long train or a short train at the back. Can't quite remember what else I was going to say about that, but it's, yeah, so it's about the journey. So the 4 journeys are from the sensor here, from the parking sensor, into here, because it's assumed that there's a short train at the front, from the parking sensor to here, because it's assumed that there's a long train at the front, or from here to, which assumes like it's nudging up, so there's the nudge up journeys as well, which is from 3 to 1 if it's assumed that it's a short train at the back, or from 2 to 1 if it's assumed that it's a long train at the back. And they're the 4 journeys that I have to plot now. So I'm going to go for the AC yard 3, and this is the budge up journey. In fact, I'm going to go and look, because even though I've only recently done these, I can't quite remember what I did. So on yard 2, it just goes from C to B to A. And on yard 1, I'm guessing it goes from C to B to A as well. Okay, so let's do a nice easy one of them then. AC yard 3. And it asks us to add the first section. So I'm going to add section 3C as the first section, and I'm going to add it here as the first section. No section to insert at the beginning. I don't know what that means. Oh, sorry, I just pressed the wrong button. AC yard 3, add next section. Direction forward, so this would be the starting section. And I think I've done a bit of a cheat here, in that if a short train's parked at the back, then it's going to be covering that sensor, and if there's a long train parked at sensor 2, it's still going to be covering that sensor. So it's a little bit of a cheat, but I think it works. So yard 3, and now my sections I can choose are limited by the, in the transit, are limited by the sections that adjoin each other and that have a path through them when I set my sections up. So I'm going to add this one, and then I'm going to add A, and I'm going to add it as a safe section, which means it's safe to stop in. And because it's the end of the journey, I want my trains to stop when they activate this block, because they're just nudging themselves forward. So I think that tick box says, yeah, it's safe to stop here. So that's all I'm going to do for this one. And then I need to do the entry to B and C, and I'm going to just have a quick look at this. So we start yard entry and then just go through there. So AC yard entry to, let's make that 3B. So this is a long train. We know this is a long train because it's going to B, and so we're going to start at the yard entry. That's not safe. And then we're going to go, now we have the path, because we've got 3 turnouts here as part of this block, the block that the section contains. We can choose the path through here. So we want to be on 3C, because that's the 3rd block on line 3. I'm going to add that section, and then I'm going to add, I've only got one choice now because there's only one block that adjoins it, so I'm going to add it and mark it as safe. And that's the yard entry to 3B done, and I'm now going to add to 3C, which would be a short train. So we start again at the yard entry, and the section isn't safe, and then we go to 3C, add that section, and that is safe because this is a short train, and I didn't take the right button there. This is a short train, so it's going to stop at the back end, and that's the transit, or effectively the journey route, done for that one. And have I done them now? So I've done my yard 3 there, and I've done 1B, 1C, 2B, 2C, 3B, 3C. So that's my transits done, and you have to remember to store, because it doesn't save anything automatically. So that is my transits done. I'm now going to set up the actual dispatches, the actual automatic trains. What I'm going to do that is I'm going to do a new train, and so I select the transit. This is the journey that the train's going to take. So we'll start with the AC yard entry to 3 B. And if it's AC line to 3B, it's a long train, and it's a long train that belongs on line 3, so that will be the class 91 Swallow. The train is in the selected transit. That means it starts, we want it starting at this yard entry sensor, because that's what we know, that's where it's going to be, because that's where it's being triggered, and it's going to destination of the train. It's going to block 2, which will give it space across blocks 2 and 3 to park. We'll take it as far as a safe section, so it stops there, terminate when done, and we will run the train automatically, and we will set the speed to a very low speed, because it does not stop with a bang, that train. So I think the lowest is 10%. I'll try it on that and see how it does. And that's it. Now if I click create here, the layout will try and drive the train, but that's not train right now. It drive the train, get it to where it wants to be, and stop and finish. But that's not actually what I want to do. I want to save this for some logic. So what I'm actually going to do is save this here, and I'm going to call it, this is the class 91 Swallow Park. I'm going to save that, and then I'm going to do a quick edit, because while I'm here I might as well do the one for nudging it. So the transit for nudging it would be AC yard 3, train would be 91 Swallow, the starting sector would be section 2, because it would be parked behind a short train, and obviously it's going to finish in block 1, and I think everything else will be the same. So I'm going to save that, and this time I'm going to call it Swallow Bump, just for bump up. And I might as well, what's my other one, the Super Sprinter, so I might as well do those while I'm here. Let's go get the Super Sprinter H, and the transit for this one we'll do the yard line first. It would start in block 3, because it would be parked behind a long train, and it would finish in block 1. And again, I think everything else is the same. I might just put the speed up a bit, because it's a pretty slow train, that one. So that would do the Super Sprinter, and so we'll call this Bump. We've got a few too many XMLs there, so let's get rid of that XML there. Super Sprinter Bump XML. And then the last transit that we want to do is parking the Super Sprinter. The Super Sprinter will park. It will assume that there's a long train in front of it when it comes to park, so it's going to go to the 3rd block, and so it's going to start in the yard entry, it's going to finish in block 3. They're the only 2 blocks it can pass through, to the safe sectors. And again, I think everything else would be the same, so we'll save that as park. Okay, and we don't want to create anything, because I don't want to be driving trains around. If I click create there, we'll run automatically. The layout's going to try and drive the train, which I don't want it to do. So that is the dispatches dispatched. Now comes the difficult bit, and the difficult bit is in here. So this is the logic, this is the clever stuff, this is the stuff that reacts to events. You set it up to monitor for specific events, and when those events happen, you tell it to do something. And yeah, this bit's the clever bit. I'm going to copy what I've done, because I know the logic kind of works. So if I go and get the, so let's say we're parking the Swallow first, so that PS stands for parking sensor, I think. So let's copy the one for the class 40 BR, and we'll call it class 91 Swallow PS, and copy an existing one. So there's parking sensor. I'm just going to rename that as well, park class 91 Swallow. Now what I'm doing is I'm just going to edit the logic that's already in it to match the line that I'm coming on. So what I want is, I want to be very restrictive on the events that trigger, because these events will trigger the logic in JMRI to start driving a train. So although I want it to be accurate and I want the train to drive when it needs to drive, I also need to be very restrictive in my conditions here, because I don't want the layout to start driving it triggered by a false positive, I guess. So my first condition is that that sensor on the yard entry one, the one that I was filming before, right at the entry of the yard, goes to active. I also want to check that that curved point that's just behind it is thrown, because if it's not, I could have waved my hand over that sensor by accident. I could have been putting something away and gone over that sensor and activated it. So a good idea that I do want to park something is that I've at some point set a route that has set that curved point to thrown. This one here, because that means I'm trying to direct something into the yard and I'm not driving stuff straight past. Next one, now I'm going to have to change this first. Now this starts telling the logic which train to drive, because it's saying, right, corner 3 AC yard 1, which is this one, is thrown. So that means it's heading off in this direction, which means I don't want to drive the APT and I don't want to drive the class 101 because they're on here. Next one, now this is a copy of the previous one, ACY2 is thrown, which is this one, which is right because it was line 2 and this was the one that I copied was for the class 40 PR. But I need to change that now because I want to check that the path is coming in here so that it knows to pick up the class 91. So I'm going to change this and I'm going to say that it should be closed, because it should be closed, but then I'm going to add another line because I need to evaluate this set of points and know that this is thrown, because if this is thrown, I know that I'd set a route to come into this line which tells it that it's going to be, ultimately it's going to be the class 91. So I'm going to add a new socket after. I'm going to put another, what is it, we're already evaluating, so it's going to be an item and it's going to be a turnout that I want to check. And I want to check turnout, is it corner 3 ACY3, and it has to be thrown. That's done. And then I'm going to check, now this checks block occupancy, and this is because I want it, if these were occupied, it would probably wait for them to be unoccupied, but actually that's not good, because if they are occupied, it's gone wrong somewhere anyway. I don't really want it to do anything. So block 3, but we're on line 3 now, so all I need to do is swap these from line 2 to line 3. AC line 3, block 3, and this one AC line 3, block 2, okay, and AC line 3, and this is assuming the assumption here is that there's a short train parked at the front. Obviously this restricts me in that I can't have, if I send 2 trains from the same line out at the same time, it's going to confuse it, but I tend not to do that, and obviously there'll be bigger automations coming when all of this is automated. It won't be a case then of JMRI having to catch trains when they come in here and park them. It will have started them. Once the full thing's automated, it will have started them in the first place, and it will just be part of its instructions to end them. So this is, in that term, this is quite short term until I get the rest of it done, but it's, yeah, just for a bit of fun. So I can't remember what I started about now. So line 3, block 1 is occupied. Line 3, block 1 is occupied. And they are my conditions. So if all of those come to true, then you can do this. If if all of those are, I don't know, I won't bother going through them. So then I need to edit this because this was from the class 40, and I now need to do the one that I just did, which was the class 91 Swallow Park, because we're coming in from the yard entry. And then I have memory variables as well, actually, that I haven't set for this yet, so I'll have to go and do them now. This is just to help it know whether the train is at the front or the rear of the line. So I'm going to go and do my memory variables now. Memory variables are very useful because if you save your XML file when you exit, then what's stored in here comes back to the layout when you start it again. So I just need to add a couple. I need to add, what have we got, class 91 Swallow location, and class 91 Swallow storage line is just a bit of a security thing. to stop it in case something goes to a different storage line. It doesn't really help with the logic or the decision making in any way. Class 91 storage line, and then we've got super sprinter H storage line, and we'll create that, and super sprinter H location, and I'll give them initial values as well. They might not match up, but I can always change them. So storage lines AC3, and we'll put the super sprinter at the rear. It has to be rear, I have to be consistent because I check those strings, and we'll put that at the front, and we'll put its storage line as AC3, and store this just in case. So back again to my logic, which will still be up here. So now start train using class 91 Swallow Park, set sensor, set memory, sorry, so we'll edit this, and we now want to put, this is going to be the class 91 Swallow, so we find class 91 Swallow location and set it to rear, because it's just brought it in, it's parked it at the back, so it sets its location to rear, which helps with other logic at various points. So that's parking the class 91 Swallow. Let's say done with that. Now let's park okay, so I'll copy a short one for this, so I'll copy the last one I did, which was the 142. So let's copy that one and say this is the, so we're parking the super sprinter H, park super sprinter H. So again, we've got these standard checks that I don't really need to go through. Has it activated that block? Has it? That be the same actually as saying is the block as the block become occupied that the sensor controls, but never mind. Turnout is thrown. Yard entry block is occupied. Turnout, so I'm kind of checking the same thing twice there, but can't hurt. That turnout is thrown. This one needs to be straight, and then we add the other one again the same as we did last time. So we'll edit this one, and we'll go, that one needs to be closed, and then we'll add another one underneath, and we'll add another turnout, and we want to say that turnout is corner 3, SCY 3, and it needs to be closed. No, turned, thrown, because it needs to come out there, it needs to be red. So create that, and then again we just need to edit these to the relevant, so this is line 3, block 3, and line 3, block 1 is occupied, okay, and also it's checking that 2 is occupied here because it wants to make sure there's a long train. This is a short train coming in, so it needs to make sure that there's a long train parked ahead of it. So that's those done, and then again we need to edit this and set the correct train. In this case it would be the super sprinter park, and one train from file, and then super sprinter H location to rear, and that's that one done. That one, and then I think we've only got one left to do, is it, or is it two? 2 nudges, is it? Yep, 2 nudges. So again, these are quick, so I'll go and do this one first. We'll copy it, and this is going to be nudge. Or bump. I'm not very consistent with my naming. These don't take long, so obviously it's not bothered about the yard entry this time because it's just nudging it forward on the line. So first check is that the two blocks ahead of it, because it knows it's a short train, so it's assuming a long train has left. So don't trigger and don't move until both of the blocks ahead of you become unoccupied. So line 3 block 1 is not occupied. Line 3 block 2 is not occupied. And here we're checking that it is at the rear, so we'll edit that, checking that its value has been set to rear, so we now have Super Sprinter H location is set to rear. And that the block it's in, a transit won't start. A transit has a start block for an automated train, and it will only start that train if the start block is occupied. So it's always worth checking, because you get lots of error messages up from automation if you try and start a train from a block and that block is unoccupied. So AC line 2 block 3 is occupied. That's obviously where it's starting from, that's where it'll be parked. Line 3 block 3 is occupied. Okay, and then start train using, want the nudge this time, so Super Sprinter bump, and then update, we've moved it to the front, so set the Super Sprinter location to be the front and tidy it up. Okay, and okay. And the last one, we're going to nudge the longer train, so I'm going to copy this one. And this is class 91 swallow nudge. Class 91 swallow nudge is there, so we'll edit this one. This is getting messy. I didn't obviously rename that last time. Nudge class 91 swallow forward. And so swap the blocks, because we're now in, oh, that was, I'll have to double check that. That doesn't seem, because I thought I copied something from 2. But anyway, so this is line 3 block 1 is not occupied, because it wants to nudge forward, so it's checking. Now this one, yeah, this has come from an old one. I'm going to get rid of this. This was when I was having that problem with the block, that middle block in the last video. So I'm going to get rid of this. We don't want to be checking sensors, we want to be checking blocks. So let's get rid of that. Yeah, and we're going to add a block in here, and it has to be line 3 block 2 is not occupied because we've got hang on, we're nudging a long train forward, so that's in block 2. So actually we don't want that at all, do we? Because it's oh well, I guess we want to check that it's occupied actually. That might be what that sensor said. So line 3 block 2 is occupied, that its location is saying that it's at the rear. Class 91 swallow location is at the rear, and that the block is, well, that's overkill, because if it's, well, I suppose it's a decent check. If it's a long train and it's covering 2, it should be covering 3 as well. So we'll go to AC line 3 block 3 is occupied, so it's checking that 2 and 3 are both occupied. Okay, line 3, and this is where it's checking the storage line. See, I should put this in more places really. It's checking that it has the correct assigned storage line, so that it doesn't, if I've decided I'm putting it on a different line, that I don't end up doing things I shouldn't be doing. So I did do this. So class 91 storage line should be AC3. Okay, and get rid of that, and then start train. This is a nudge, isn't it? So we're gonna say nudge the class 91 swallow forward, and we're going to set its memory the memory for its location, and it should be again the class 91 swallow, class 91 swallow location to front, and remove that socket, and that should be us done. I'm back up then, and I've made a couple of small changes. The Super Sprinter wasn't on the layout, so I've put it on up there. It's probably not going to live on this line, but I just thought I'd add it to demo with. And the class 91 is behind it, so I've swapped the memory variables around so that the layout knows that the Super Sprinter's at the front and the class 91's at the back, but from this point onwards it should manage that itself. So I really haven't tested this, so goodness only knows what's going to happen. I'll try and get my tablet to somewhere where I can use it. So the route sets, the first thing I've got to do is get the Super Sprinter out and see if the class 91 starts moving, and if it doesn't, start debugging why. So out goes the Super Sprinter. We probably should have had movement by now, so it's already time to start looking at why that 91 hasn't moved. Well, we have a dispatch on the screen for the class 91. So it is trying to move it. It's sent it to try and move. So I'm going to have a look now at the layout, see if it thinks anything's blocked. No. So go and have a look at the class 91 just in case it needs a nudge or it's derailed. And over here at the screen is my answer. It's trying to run transit AC yard 1, which means it's trying to run it down the yard 1 line, but it's not, or it won't, because all of the sensors on that line are occupied because it's parked. So that's just a mistake I've made in the config, so I need to go in, change that and try again. Actually, just for completeness, I had a previous class 91 swallow bump file and I've selected the wrong one in the Logix. I think I had one as an experiment when it was back on line 1, so I could really do with deleting this file. So actually with that fixed, I've just started the Super Sprinter up again. I think I've set the memory variables right after I've changed it. So I've moved the class 91 up to make space for this one, so it should, in theory, get grabbed and parked when it comes around here. Let's see if it does. We'll soon know by the speed change. Oh yeah, there we go, maybe a bit on the slow side, but that's encouraging. This time it's been grabbed and it's been slowed down. So unless I've got sensors wrong, there, it's stopped. Excellent. So now we grab the 91 swallow and we just move around so the camera can see. Bring its noisy old coaches out. Have a look down here to see if the swallow picks up that it should be moving. Haven't cleared it yet, have we? Just cleared it now, and there it goes. This is encouraging. So that's making its way down to make space for the 91 as it comes around. I'm not sure if I can't hear a derailment in that 91 somewhere. Maybe it's alright. To slow it. Oh yes, there's a big derailment down there. While this, so the good thing now is I can just leave that Super Sprinter going and come and sort out a nasty cheap DVT. Sounds okay. Let's see if this moves again. So I assume now that the Super Sprinter has gone. Speed you up a bit. Where it should, which is on there. So let's see what happens with the 91 coming down the back. Oh, look, we've slowed down, that's good. Once they've slowed down, I'm pretty confident that they're going to do what they're supposed to do. This last block, block 2, that gets activated when it hits the sensor here is marked as a safe block, and that's what tells it to stop, apart from the occupied block in front of it. But in this case it stops successfully, which terminates the transit and the dispatch, and that's it. So now let's try the super sprinter again while we're here. Now that goes, and see if we get, oh, there we go. This will nudge itself forward to there. I can definitely move the sensor into that furthermost gap again now. And seeing as I'm on my feet and moving, let's follow the super sprinter, which is making its way over here. Close up of a truss. Unavoidable close up of a truss in a loft layout like this one. Round the corner. Are we going to slow down? Oh, we are. In we go. Parked. I'm really happy with that. I have to say, this is kind of why all this technology and stuff is why I started a second layout, and to get onto this automation now really is, it's got me very enthusiastic to carry on. So I need to do the 4th line, then I need to do all the sensors on the clockwise lines so that it's all doing the same, which will be especially useful underneath the baseboards there on the lines that I can't see. But I've obviously as well now I've got the impetus to get on with the current detection blocks and start really running transits around the layout of trains that are controlled entirely by the layout, and also see how that interacts with me manually driving other trains at the same time, because stuff like this old class 43 consist down here is never really going to lend itself to automation and transits. So they're the kind of trains I'll be driving myself manually so that I can push them when they stall. But how the layout reacts to me driving trains in its way and that kind of thing, which will be fascinating. Actually, sorry, just a last little bit on these stopping distance. Obviously they're very accurate now. This is the 43 that the 91 that just budged up, and I'm sure if I start moving it back it's not going to be very far, although it's pushing the sprinter as well because they were that close. Yeah, it was just over the sensor. Now this one, the class 142, is actually overrunning the sensor by quite a way, and I've actually pushed this one back, but it does end up down here a little bit and blocking the 101 as it comes out. Now the decoder on this train has a little bit of an increased deceleration value for a smooth stop. So if I reduce that, it will stop more suddenly. And again, for maybe trains like this one that stop suddenly, I can increase their deceleration value, and that will still count when the layout stops them. So there is some fine tuning I can do, and obviously the speed that they're going at as well. The faster they're going, the longer they'll take to react and stop. So I do have a little bit of, now I know it's so accurate and so consistent when the layout's doing it, I do have a little bit of leeway on how far after the sensor gets activated the trains actually stop.